What up, flockers? In this video I'm going to go over the best parrots that you can get that aren't going to bite your fingers off. Because chances are you've probably seen plenty of videos about the best talking parrots, and of course everyone knows, alright, African greys, macaws, Amazons, cockatoos. I mean, those birds, sure, they're great talkers and all. But the big problem is, in my opinion, they don't make good pets because they are massive birds and you risk losing a finger or two, which does happen. So this is why in this video I'm going to go over more pet-friendly options if you really want to get a talking parrot. So with that, let's go ahead and begin. So first up are going to be budgies. Now, budgies are pretty much everywhere. You may know them in the US as parakeets, though parakeets is actually classification, not the actual name of the bird. They're in fact called budgies or budgieries, and you can pretty much find them everywhere. A lot of pet stores have these birds. They're very, very common and very, very affordable. They're also really small, they're pretty cute, they come in all kinds of colors, and they actually have a very decent talking ability. I mean, if you just want a talking bird, like this kind of loosely fits in there, but it is a talking bird. Now their voice quality is very, very raspy, very, very low volume because these are really tiny parrots. So don't expect anything that's gonna be, you know, tricking some thief that's breaking into your home and thinks, oh no, someone's home, I gotta scram. Unfortunately, these birds are gonna sound very, very quiet, and they only will memorize like just a few things, some sounds, some phrases, but very, very little. But they do in fact talk, if that is something that you're looking for. Now the next parrot I also recommend for talking are gonna be parrotlets. If you don't know what a parrotlet is, they're basically the smallest species of parrot that you can actually buy in a store. So that makes them really, really cool, and they are actually a little bit smaller than budgies. But what makes them great is they are slightly better talkers than budgies. I mean, they can actually memorize a few more phrases, and I describe them as having a very Amazon-like, you know, very fun, big bird in a tiny body personality. So they will probably vocalize quite a bit, and you will have a better chance at catching your parrotlet talking a few phrases here and there. Now, if you're someone that really does want a talking parrot, but you also are maybe in an apartment or some other setting where you can't have a larger parrot, I think parrotlets are probably going to be one of the best options you can possibly get if you want a talking bird that is also small, depending on your living conditions. I think they're a pretty solid choice, and I think that they'll satisfy a decent amount of people who are very dead set on a talking parrot, and they'll take what they can get. But if you are very stubborn on things like quality and it's sounding more realistic, then let's keep going. Next up we have the princess parrot, and the princess parrot are really great parrots. They have kind of more of a bird brain personality in my opinion, but they also, because they're a parrot, have a pretty decent talking ability. Now they are a decently small, medium size, and generally rule of thumb is like the bigger birds generally have better talking ability. So princess parrot, now that we're getting more into the medium-ish territory, they actually turn out to be pretty decent talkers, and they're pretty active. They're very curious pets. They're still small enough that they can get along in an apartment setting, and they're not that loud that you can probably make it work. So they end up being some pretty solid talking birds if you're really wanting a talking parrot, but nothing too crazy big. So with that, I would say princess parrot is a very solid choice. But next up are just conures in general. There are so many different conures. I'm not gonna break down into extreme fine detail on which conures are the best talkers and stuff, because there's just too many of them. But in general, the rule of thumb is conures generally talk. There are a few exceptions, such as maybe like the green cheek conure, where maybe they'll like mumble or maybe a little bit of phrases, but generally most conures are very loud, very noisy birds, and as such they also talk. Now if you didn't know this, the general rule of thumb is the noisier the bird, the more likely they're going to talk. So that's why as we're going down this list, some of these birds may not be apartment friendly, as they're going to probably get louder and louder. And I would say conures are kind of in that middle ground where I would say if you want to be a nice neighbor, don't get conures, but there are definitely some people that just don't really care and get a conure and somehow it works out. So there you go, things like sun conures, Janday conures. I mean, honestly, there's a whole slew of conures and vast majority of them talk, and especially if you're gonna get a male parrot, rule of thumb is females are less likely to talk, males are more likely to talk. So if you are dead set on a talking parrot and still want something in a small package, conures could be for you. Now next up is gonna be one of my personal favorite talking parrots, and that's gonna be the Indian ringneck parakeet. Now the Indian ringnecks are absolutely so cute when they talk, and there's a lot of viral videos on how they talk. They have a decent vocabulary and they will pick up quite a bit of phrases, but if you're looking for clarity and realism, you don't really get an Indian ringneck for that, because instead the way they talk kind of distorts the audio to where this parrot, when it talks, sounds like a squeaky toy. Yes, literally imagine a squeaky toy talking to you, and that is exactly how an Indian ringneck sounds, which in my opinion makes it one of my favorite talking parrots you can possibly get. I think they're adorable, they're great. If you really want a talking parrot but you're looking for something a little different, Indian ringnecks are probably I think Indian ringnecks could be the perfect choice for you. Next up is gonna be the mustache parakeet. Now mustache parakeets are very similar to Indian ringnecks in a lot of different ways, and that includes their voices, though I don't think they're as like squeaky sounding as an Indian ringneck. I think they're maybe just a little bit more accurate, though, you know, people might argue with me there. But yeah, mustache parakeets are overall just slightly better talkers than Indian ringnecks. They're not as squeaky sounding, just a little bit more realistic, but they still sound pretty different. They're definitely getting towards like just being really good talkers. And not to mention they have a really interesting look. You know, the ringnecks have the ring around their neck, while the mustache parakeet's got a cute little mustache. So if that's something you want, a little different kind of a pet parrot that talks, you should look into those. I think they're great birds. Next up though are gonna be Hans macaws. Now Hans macaws are one of my favorite parrots that you can get, and it's because they're just straight up a macaw in a tiny package. They are in fact the smallest species of macaw that you can possibly buy. And what's really interesting is when they were first discovered, were thought to actually be conures, until later they found no, they are actually genetically macaws. But as such, they also are great talkers like macaws. Macaws are generally pretty famous for, you know, talking and being very fun. You'll see them at zoos doing shows. Macaws are one of the most popular talking parrots you can get, but the big issue is they have massive beaks that I just do not recommend them as pets. Just last week I was visiting a breeder for hyacinth macaws, and he told me how like his pet macaw one time bit someone's finger off, but didn't take just one finger, took 2 fingers off in a single bite. Now granted, sure, it's a hyacinth macaw, which if you don't know is the largest species of macaw, polar opposite of a Hans macaw, but yes, macaws are very dangerous birds. So I don't recommend them, but Hans macaws, perfect middle ground. Small, cute size, small, medium size, great talkers, overall amazing pet parrots. And then last up I would like to mention are Quaker parrots. I think Quaker parrots are really fun, energetic birds. I best describe them as a cockatoo in a parakeet body. That's what I would go with. And that also means they are very great talkers. They're super energetic. They just talk all the time and they have a decent clarity to them. Obviously, these are still small birds. They're not going to be super realistic like larger parrots, but I would say that for their voice quality, for their size, they're pretty good. You know, a little bit scratchy, but like overall a good quality. So if you're really dead set on a talking parrot in a small size, I think Quaker parrots could be the ones for you. Now, as of right now, I should have most of these parrots reviewed on my channel that you can check out if you want more detail, and I will of course go through all the birds eventually, as my goal is to review every single parrot in existence. So if you want to follow along, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and with that I'll see you next time.